Hi, this is my lecture on the chemistry of life. So, this is really the first of the third part of that. So, this is chapter two, chemistry of life. The first thing they're going to talk about is the building blocks of molecule, then properties of water, and then the macromolecules. So, this is just the first part of, and then I'm going to do a different one for properties of water, and I'm going to do a different presentation for macromolecules. So, this is just on the building blocks of molecules. All right. So by the end of this, you should be able to, and again, this should be a lot of review. You should have had all of this in chemistry last year. So this is just a quick review. So you're going to describe the structure of atom and name the 6 elements found in biological molecules and describe the 3 main types of chemical bonding. There's key vocabulary. All right, so an organism can be broke down into smaller levels of organization. So I feel like we did ecology first, which was actually much bigger than this. That up went to the biosphere. So this is actually small, starting with small molecules, like water would be a small molecule, hydrogen gas would be a small molecule, right? And then you have large molecules, and these are going to be the macromolecules we're going to talk about in the third part. And then those large molecules can make up cells. Cells can make up tissues. So here you have a leaf tissue, here you have cardiac tissue, and then the tissue can make up the heart, and the leaf tissue can make up a leaf. And then you have organs. So this is a plant, and this is an animal. And then you have this is the cardiovascular system, and then you have more complex organisms. But we're starting actually down here. So the smallest level of organization is the chemical level, where atoms join together to form small molecules. So basically, atoms are made up of 3 types of particles or units, and those units are the nucleus and the protons. The neutrons and the protons are found in the nucleus. The protons have a positive charge. Neutrons are neutral. And then you have electrons that actually orbit in these orbits around the outside of the nucleus. So the electrons are generally much smaller than the protons and the neutrons. And this is basically the atomic weight. The atomic weight is really the protons and the neutrons. The electrons are extremely small. But the electrons do orbit. Okay, so the atoms contain 2 regions. The nucleus contains positively charged particles known as protons and neutral uncharged particles known as neutrons. Electron shells or orbitals contain negatively charged particles. Electrons orbit the nucleus in different energy levels. You should have had all of this in chemistry. These are a lot smaller than these. The forces that operate between the oppositely charged particles, protons and electrons, hold the atom together. Most atoms contain all 3 types of subatomic particles. Hydrogen atom is an exception because it has 1 proton and 1 electron and no neutrons. The number of protons in the nucleus determines the kind of element an atom is. This is known as the atomic number, while the number of electrons determines how the atom reacts. So the number of protons in the nucleus determines the kind of element an atom is, and this is known as the atomic number, which is right up here at the top. So carbon has an atomic number of 6. That means that it has 6 protons and 6 electrons. So how many of the protons do each of these atoms have? Calcium has 20, nitrogen has 7, aluminum has 13, sodium has 11, and fluorine has 9. And that's the answer to that. Okay, an element is a substance which is made up of 1 type of atom. For this region, elements are called pure substances. There are 94 naturally occurring elements known to scientists. These have been arranged on a chart called the periodic table. And so it goes by atomic number. So this has no one proton. this has one proton and one neutron, right? So, and that's how these go. So this really tells you how many, this one has two protons, I'm sorry. So this really tells you how many protons there have, is the atomic number. The main elements found in living things are carbon and hydrogen. So carbon and hydrogen, and if you put these two together with a covalent bond, that makes an organic molecule. An organic molecule has to have carbon and hydrogen in it. There's oxygen, sulfur, nitrogen, and phosphorus. So those are the main elements, main in living things. And when we study the macromolecules, this is what they're going to have in them. But the backbone is generally always carbon and hydrogen. It is the bonding between these atoms of these six elements that make all life possible. Chemical bonding involves atoms gaining, losing, or sharing electrons in order to form larger structures. This allows them to complete any partially full electron shells and become more stable in the process. So when atoms bond, they form molecules and compounds. Molecules are any group of atoms that are chemically bonded together. Compounds are two or more different atoms bonded together. So basically, all compounds are molecules, but in order to be a compound, you have to have a different atom. So this is a molecule, and this is also a molecule, but this is considered a compound because it has oxygen and hydrogen in it. So this is saying, deciding if they're molecules or compounds. So these all have one element in them. So these would all be molecules. And these are also molecules, but these have different, this has nitrogen and oxygen, this has hydrogen and oxygen, this is nitrogen and oxygen, this is carbon and oxygen. So these are also considered to be compounds. And that's what this is saying. So these are all molecules. Well, they're all molecules, but these are considered compounds because they have two different elements in them. Okay, so atoms can form three different types of chemical bonds, and actually, your book actually has van der Waals in it too, which is actually a weaker bond than hydrogen bonds, but it doesn't go into it here. And so ionic bonds are formed when atoms gain or lose electrons and become ions. So ions are basically charged particles, right? So here you're gonna, so this is the positively charged nucleus, and then this is the electrons, right? So these are showed the electrons, and the electrons are basically negatively charged. And so this one has one electron, and this one has one electron, right? So if this electron gets transferred over to this atom, there's a transfer of electrons. So now this one has no electrons, and this one has two electrons, right? So this one is going to have a positive charge because it has one more proton than electron. And this one's going to have a negative charge because it has two electrons to one proton, right? So it has one more electron than proton, which gives it a negative charge. And then this is called an anion because it's negatively charged. And this is called a cation, which is a positively charged, right? So this is a transfer of electrons. These are ionic bonds. And so since opposite charges attract, the positive and negative ions are pulled together to form an ionic bond. So the ionic bond is actually right here. This is salt, right? So the ionic bond is right here. So these bonds are strong and therefore require large amounts of energy in order to be broken. An example of an exchange of an electron between a sodium and a chlorine atom can be seen in the diagram below. So this is salt, right? This is sodium chloride. This is salt. And but if you look at it, right? So this is the nucleus. So this has the protons and the neutrons in. And the first electron shell will have two electrons, and it's going to be full. So once it has two electrons, it's going to go to the second shell. And that second shell really wants 8 in it. Okay. But chlorine here only, so, and then the third shell also has 8 in it. So it goes, the first shell has 2, and this one also has 2. The second shell has 8, and this one, they both have 8. And then the third shell also wants 8, right? But sodium only has 1 in its outer shell. So it needs 7 more to actually fill that outer shell. And that's what makes it more stable. If you fill your outer electron shell, it makes you more stable. So sodium has the choice of either losing 1 electron or gaining 7 to fill this outer shell, right? So it's, to make it more stable, it's really easier for it to lose that electron. So chlorine, on the other hand, it has 2 in its innermost shell, that's 2, plus 8, that's 10, and then plus 7, it has 17, right? So it has 7 on its outermost shell, but it really wants 1 more. That's the octet rule. Octet is 8, right? So this is going to give this one up, and this one's going to accept it. But it actually takes a lot of energy to do that. This is not an easy bond to form. But then this makes this one now, this one's actually stable, right? So its outer electron shell is filled. And now this outer electron shell is also filled. So this one also has 8. But the bond is actually, so this has a positive charge because it lost an electron. So it has 1 more proton than it does an electron, which makes it a positive charge. And this one has 1 more electron right here than protons, which gives it a negative charge. So this is an anion, and this is a cation, and the positive and negatives are actually attracted to each other, which makes it bond. So this is salt. All right, so generally the donation of electron by one atom cannot happen without an electron reciprocate. So these two processes of electron donation, which comes from the sodium, and the electron acceptance, which comes from the chloride, must occur at the same time. Certain ions such as sodium, potassium, and calcium are referred to as electrolytes in biology. These ions are essential for the function of the nervous system, muscle contraction, and water balance in the body. Okay, so here's a comprehension check. You could do that. So 3 types of bonding: define ionic bond and draw a diagram to show an ionic bond forms. So it's sharing of an electron. The 3 types of bonding are ionic, which we just went over, covalent, and hydrogen bonding. A bond which forms through the loss and gain of an electron. And then this is an example of that, right? So they're actually transferring an electron over to here. So now this one has 2 electrons, this one has no electron. So covalent bonds are formed when electrons are shared. So covalent, which means means sort of like if you cooperate, right, you're sharing. So, and valent is a valent electron. So valence electrons are on the outermost shell. That's what valence electrons are. You should know that from chemistry. This is commonly seen in carbon-based molecules. So organic molecules. So organic molecules generally have a carbon backbone, and all those macromolecules we're going to eventually talk about are organic molecules. So they all have a carbon backbone, and they generally have hydrogen associated with them as well. They do. And also water. And this is an essential molecule found in all living things. So we're carbon-based, and so we have carbon-based molecules. But this is the idea of sharing an electron, right? So here, this one has 1 electron and 1 proton. This one has 1 electron and 1 proton. And now they're going to actually share that electron. And this here would be hydrogen gas, because it's the only one that has 1 proton and 1 electron. So this would be hydrogen gas. And that's a covalent bond. So they share electrons. Ionic bonds transfer electrons. Covalent bonds share electrons. Okay, so this is the water molecule, which you're going to do next. So you're going to talk about properties of water next. So in the water molecule, each hydrogen atom shares one electron with the oxygen atom, and the oxygen atom shares two electrons, one electron for each atom. So, right, so this is its outermost shell. So, but it actually only has one, but this shell actually wants two electrons. So the way it's going to fill its outermost shell, it's going to share this electron with an oxygen, and the same one here. It only has one electron, but the innermost shell has to have two electrons, so it's going to share one with that oxygen. And oxygen has an atomic number of 8, right? So it has 2 in its innermost shell and 6 in its outermost shell, but the second shell wants 8 electrons. That's the octet rule. And so it now has 6, but it wants 8, so it needs 2 more. So it's going to share this electron with this, and it's going to share this electron with this, right? So these are sharing these 2 electrons. So now hydrogen has its outermost electron filled, and this oxygen has 8 now, and it has its outer electron shell filled. So one thing I will add here is that this oxygen is considered an electron hog. So because it's more negative. So this electron is going to actually spend more time with the oxygen than it is with the hydrogen, which actually gives water its polar quality. Okay. Okay, so actually when you fill your outer electron shell, your water molecule is more stable than its component atoms, right? So that's what it says at the bottom there. Okay, so the next one is hydrogen bonds, and these are relatively weak bonds which require little energy to break. And this is a water molecule, and it's because this is oxygen, and then this is hydrogen. And I already talked about it being polar. So this oxygen is electron hog, which makes it more negative. And if that makes that more negative, it makes the hydrogens more positive. And I'll show you this again. But the hydrogen bonds are going to be between the negative oxygen and the positive hydrogen. And this is a hydrogen bond right here. But these are weak bonds, so they can form and break and form and break and form and break and form and break, right? And that's how they do. But this is, so it's between a proton of one molecule and an electronegative atom of another. So this is electronegative, and this is basically a proton because it doesn't actually, almost all of the electrons spend most of their time over here in the oxygen, which makes this negative and this more positive. So the hydrogen bonds are a lot of time are between an O and an H, because this one's negative and this one's positive. But again, these are weak, so these can break and form and break and form and break and form, which is important because it takes less energy to do whatever water does. Okay, so basically, this is a covalent bond here, right? So this shows you, and these are actually all covalent bonds. This is actually a sugar molecule, and there's actually a carbon at each one of these, intersections here or corners. There's actually a carbon, and this is a phosphate. But this is all, these are all covalent bonds, right? This is a ring. This is a carbon ring. And this is a phosphorus. And this is a nucleotide. So, so these are all covalent bonds. So this is the backbone of DNA. And this is also a backbone of DNA. So DNA is a double helix, right? So this is one side, and this is the other side, which makes it double. But those nucleotides are actually held together by hydrogen bonds. So these are strong bonds. These are very strong. And so this is a very stable, and they're bonded so that their outer electron shells are filled. So these bonds are strong, and these bonds are actually weak, that actually hold the double helix together. These are weak. And that's important because in order to copy your DNA, this is going to have to unzip. And then the RNA is going to come in here and it's going to copy it. But so if it takes a lot of energy to unzip it, it's harder to copy the DNA. So it's important that these bonds are weak because it actually allows it to unzip and then zip back up. when you're not copying. So it's going to unzip, it's going to copy the DNA to make a protein, and then it's going to zip back up. That's the idea. Okay, so that's that one. Okay, so can you define a covalent bond? Name the main atom which forms covalent bonds, and describe how a hydrogen bond differs to a covalent bond. And define a covalent bond. That is a bond formed when electrons are shared, as compared to the ionic bond is when they're transferred. The main atom which forms covalent bonds are carbon, and carbon and hydrogen make up organic compounds. And describe how a hydrogen bond differs to a covalent bond. Covalent bonds are strong, and they generally are harder to break, where covalent bonds are weak. Hydrogen bonds are, that's important because it allows you to do work more easily. So that's all I have for this presentation, and I will see you next time. I hope that's helpful.